It's been my pleasure to know her because I knew her when it was, Breeze was her nickname as a male. And it's really been interesting to me to see her go through this change and then to be able to read it. I found myself quite emotional about it because I've you know, it's intimate change watching somebody go through it. I think she did a great job of putting it into words. I don't know how many people here have read it, but I couldn't put it down, frankly. And so that's good. And I think that she'll have a good opportunity to tell you what these different terms mean and so forth. And at this time, I'd like to bring Danielle Bergen up here.
Thank you. Okay. Aloha, everyone, and thank you. Quite an honor to be here tonight, I have to tell you. I was invited to another book club last Thursday and drove a few miles down the road to Hana, way out in Haiku, off the road. Had no idea where I was going, but I found the place. So this is nice. This is nice. This is only the second time I've actually been in a room where more people that have attended have read my book than most of the time are book signings. So I'm telling them about it. So what I'd like to do tonight is I'd just like to talk a little bit in the beginning about my book. I'll do some selected readings. And then I thought what we could do is look at some of these terms up here. Okay? We'll look at a couple of them first. Transgender, of course, is like an umbrella category. Okay? So someone who's like, I would be considered transgender. Basically, someone who's transgender has the mind of one gender and the body of the other. But it doesn't necessarily mean specifically to transsexuals, although I'm a transsexual woman. Okay, so I actually live as a woman. I was born as a male. But transgender is an umbrella term. It can include cross-dressers. It can include drag queens. It can include anyone who's gender variant, anyone who in their mind is portraying themselves as the opposite gender. Now, for example, a cross-dresser might just be a straight male who just likes dressing up in women's clothes and maybe meeting with some of the other guys dressed up in women's clothes and going out to dinner and having fun, but they have no intentions at all of ever changing genders. They're just doing it as either a fetish or something to excite them or just something to make them feel comfortable. So as I said, I'm a transsexual, meaning that I actually transitioned at one point from male to female, as you read in the book. And gender versus sexuality, and the reason I'm putting this up here, is that it's two really completely different groups. Now, transgender, it comes at the end of the LGBT, which is the lesbian, bisexual, gay, transgender grouping that we're all in. So we were added a little ways down the road. But they're all, the first parts of it are involved with sexuality, okay? Gender is basically like you're a man, you're a woman, okay? We are knowing that this is who we are. I'm a woman now. But sexuality is about who we love, who we're going to love. So someone who is gay, okay, if they're male, they're going to love another male. If they're female, they're going to love another woman. Someone who's straight is going to love, males will love females, females love males. Someone who is bisexual, they get the best of all the worlds, so to speak. So, but gender really, it's who you are. And so that was what my conundrum was. When I was little, when I was 3 years old, I realized up here that there was something different about me. I knew that I had the body of a boy. I knew that. I started learning that about gender, but in my mind I was a girl. And I would often get into discussions with my mother about it. And I know a lot of you have read the book, but I love reading some of these little parts of it here. This happened when I was 5 years old. Whenever I spoke about my gender to my mother, she always dismissed it as silliness. After all, Looking at her from her viewpoint, how could she actually take me seriously? The fact was, I had a penis between my legs. But that did not stop me from trying to persuade my mother. I remember an incident about a year later. I was 5 at the time, and my baby sister Maureen, recently born, was almost a year old. We were in the kitchen, and my mother was giving my sister a bath in the kitchen sink. I asked if I could help. While Mom was bathing Maureen, I watched, and then helped by handing her the soap and the washcloth. All of a sudden, I noticed something as Mom was rinsing my sister, that something was different about my sister. I asked, Mommy, how come Maureen doesn't have a pee-pee? Well, Danny, said Mom, Maureen's a little girl. Little girls don't have pee-pees. I looked quizzically at my mother. But Mom, I have a pee-pee. I'm a little girl, I said with assurance. She looked back at me. Not this again, Danny. How many times have I told you? You're a little boy. I don't care what you think is in that little head of yours. You are a little boy. God made you into a little boy, and God does not make mistakes, she said to me firmly. And I frowned. No, Mommy. God is trying to fool you and trying to fool me. I'm really a little girl. You'll see. I'm going to grow up as a little girl. So my mom and I used to go round and round with this at a very young age. And then I finally realized it would get her really upset, and I wasn't going to talk to her about it anymore because I was starting to get punished for that. Then I went to parochial school. So when I was in parochial school, I was immersed in the Catholic religion. And I learned all about catechism. I learned all about everything. And I heard that God was perfect and makes us perfect. And I had the body of a boy, so I must be perfectly a boy. And I even tried to ask some of my friends sometimes, some of my guy friends, just kind of slyly, like, did you ever wish that maybe you were born a girl? And every single one of them would look at me going, what? Are you crazy? Why would I ever want to be a girl? You don't think that, do you? And of course I would go, oh, no, I don't think that. Not at all. No, why? I mean, I just thought maybe you're asking, I thought maybe you did because you have 5 sisters. So I thought maybe you thought about it. But every time I backed off of it, and not one person, not one friend of mine even ever thought that, ever thought it. So finally, with all the Catholic religion and everything, parochial school, I kept thinking, okay, and I pray to God all the time, every time I went to bed at night, God, just let me wake up in the morning as a little girl. Let my life be exactly the same, have the same parents, but just let me be a little girl. And every night I would go to bed a little boy, and every morning I would wake up and still a little boy in my body, but my mind was still female. So then I thought, well, I'm learning about being an altar boy. I'm learning about all this. I'm learning about how powerful God is. I'm learning about the Catholic religion, and I realized, there's these people in the Catholic religion called martyrs, and they were they did these things. They had these terribly oppressed lives, and then they were spiritually delivered at the end of their life or at some point in their life by God. And I kept thinking, that must be it. I must be living as a martyr, and one day, God is either going to turn me into a little girl, or He's going to make me just want to be a boy, and it would be that much easier. Because as I got to be towards puberty, I started thinking it would be so much easier if this person inside me named Danielle would just go away and leave me alone. Because I learned how to be a boy, and it was just, every day was just that craziness. So, as I said in the book, I learned to pray early in life. And I did so perhaps more often than not because of my confusion around my gender. My relationship with God seemed strong, although He did not answer my prayers and make me a girl when I was younger. As I grew older, I felt convinced that He would help me be a boy, since He created me with the body of one. I figured if God gave me a girl's brain because He wanted me to suffer like those martyrs that I learned about in school. I identified with all those who suffered. I was convinced that my life was supposed to be one of struggle, eventually overcoming with God's help and being delivered into one mind and one body as a male. This was how I looked at things, and I was blossoming into this average boy, grateful for my alter ego, but beginning to have her lose power over me. And then the more I tried to be a boy, at times, the more Danielle disappeared. But then I hit puberty, and I just, if I could cross-dress, I would cross-dress all the time. As I got to high school, I became an athlete. Most transgender or transsexual male to females like myself will overcompensate our masculinity just to hide completely who we are. So people just think, we're one of the guys, we're one of the people there. You'll find a lot of transgender women who used to be policemen or firemen or forest rangers or, some mechanics, some really masculine jobs, right? And there's some athletes out there as well. So I was a high school athlete, and I just loved sports. It was a great outlet for me. And once I got in high school and I found alcohol, then I realized alcohol was also a relief. It would just get rid of all those feelings of me wanting to be a girl. It would numb me completely. So I used to love to drink all the time. When I got to college, I added not only marijuana, not only speed, but I added cocaine as well. And when I moved to Maui, I was doing all of those. In fact, the reason I came to Maui was because after I graduated from college, I moved back home for a while. And I was living at home and living with my sisters. I had 5 sisters at that time. There's like 11 of us, but 5 of my sisters were at home. And my parents, so when the girls were at school or my parents were at work, I would eventually call in sick every once in a while. I would grow facial hair to try and not be Danielle, but I would shave off my beard and I would go out and I'd grab my sister's clothes and I would just go out around town. I don't know how many times I almost got caught. I realized eventually I'm going to get caught and I needed to get away. My whole life was spent running away from who I am. And so I moved to Maui. And when I got to Maui, I figured, okay, I just leave Danielle in New York. I'm in Maui. That's not how it worked. I drank a lot. I started doing more drugs over here. I really became, this guy who was like all into sports. I knew all kinds of statistics. I used to be like the guy's guy around sports and everything. But all my friends, all my real close friends were women. One of them sitting right over there. Robin has known me ever since I got to the island. And Robin and I were really good friends. I hung out with a lot of women. Robin's sister Pam lived here back then. Pam and I were close friends. I mean, I had a couple close male friends, but most of my group were women because I always felt like I was just part of them. I felt comfortable, but I could never tell anyone why. I could never tell anyone why. So even though I would pretty much keep this part of me, this gender identity disorder, numbed by alcohol and drugs, eventually I would get so worked up because I wouldn't be able to dress or be Danielle that all of a sudden I would call in sick for work for like a few days or a week, and I would just go out and buy some clothes and make up a story that I was buying it for my sister or whatever, and I would dress up. And one time I even got on a plane and went to California. I mean, this is the insanity of how I was driven. One morning I was fairly hungover, and I went to town to deposit my paycheck. I went to a local boutique and I decided to buy some clothes for Danielle. I purchased 2 outfits, 2 pairs of shoes, both size 10. While my feet were size 9 in men's, I knew from my sister Debbie's feet that I needed 1 size bigger. So I went home, everybody was working. So I changed in my bedroom. I still had my mustache, so I shaved that right away. And I looked just like a woman. Yet I did not know how to make my hair feminine. And my hair was long, longer than it is now, actually. I still wore it to my shoulders, and I could easily pass in public if I could do something with it. So then I had this thought, similar to one I had before I moved to Maui. In about 2 hours, I was at the Hyatt Regency Hair Salon, telling a tale that I was going to some costume party that evening. Within a short time, they did my hair, my makeup, and transformed me into this beautiful young woman. I even had fake nails put on. I left the salon and felt so jazzed I was in a trance to continue this journey. I decided I'd call the airport and ask how much a flight was to San Francisco, one way. My logic was, if tickets available and it's affordable, I'm going. And so against any other logical thoughts, I became focused on getting to the mainland. I figured if I could reach San Francisco, then I could stay a few days with my friends Don and Ellie. There would also be an opportunity to see other women like me, as I knew there was a significant transgender population in the city. So I was just beginning to learn about being transgender at that point. I knew Renee Richards, I knew what she was, and yet that's the kind of insanity that my mind would drive me to. Now, as the 80s progressed, my drinking increased, my drug use increased. I stayed in the restaurant business. I used to joke and say I was part of the bartending mafia in West Maui, that any bartender who worked in any restaurant could walk into any bar at any time and get a free drink waiting for them at the bar and never have to pay for it. And I could go to Chemo's, or I could go to Leilani's, or I could go to any place. I could go to the Kapalua Grill and Bar, and I knew all the other bartenders. So I never had to pay for anything, and we all did drugs, and I did it because I just didn't want to get the feelings back of being who I was. I was still running from myself. It got to be in my late 30s that the drugs and the alcohol stopped working. And when that stopped working, there was another person inside me that kind of came out. And those of you who've read the book, that was called the Mohawk Man. And that was a person who was just had no idea what to do with their lives, but was just trying to run away and just have as much freedom, not care what anyone thinks about anything. And that was like an alter ego. And that one scared me the most, because that one always told me that after I got a mohawk and everything, that I should just, I might as well just kill myself. And that's when my thoughts of suicide came in. So from the time I was in my mid-30s until I got sober, I had thoughts of suicide. And in 1999, it got the worst. When Kapalua Bay Hotel was closed for renovation, I went back east, and I had a really, really bad episode. And I stood inside this building a little bit from the roof and just contemplating on going outside and jumping off and just killing myself, because I'd just gone out and got a mohawk, and I was so ashamed of my life. I quit my job. I wouldn't call my family for help. It was bad. It was really bad. Fortunately, I had a couple friends, both nurses, who helped me out, and they finally got me psychiatric help and finally got me psychological help. And I finally got clean and sober. And that was a trip too, because I came into this 12-step program that I did not like at all. But I'll never forget the last night that I drank. It was crazy. This is how I would try to numb my feelings. Like, as I said, it wouldn't work anymore. But I would go out often and do this. I was at a time where I was going a few months without having a drink and being okay. And then Danielle would come out, and I'd want to go out and I'd want to drink. 2 months to the day that I was off from both of my jobs for a change, I decided to dress as Danielle and have dinner at a Thai Chinese restaurant at the bottom of the hill down from my home. I went in, and the bartender greeted me. "Hi, Breeze, I haven't seen you in a while. Would you like a vodka and Diet Coke?" This had been my drink of choice as Danielle for the past 4 years. Without even thinking, I said, "Sure, that sounds good." I had a few cocktails before dinner and then a few more after. Then I switched to chip shots. These are 12-ounce brandy snifters with Kahlua, Baileys, and Tawaka topped off with coffee. After about 4 of those, I was ready to head home when the guy came in next to me and wanted to buy me a drink. Flattered because I thought he felt I was a woman, I accepted. For the next few hours, we drank. This included 3 or 4 more vodka and Diet Cokes, plus 2 bottles of wine. My companion stumbled out about 9:30, and I followed him, feeling no pain. I drove up to my house and went home, and stayed there all of 10 minutes when I grabbed my car keys and headed back out, this time to the Ritz-Carlton. Here I met a newly married couple who thought I was their new best friend. They had some cocaine, and I helped them consume it. We began doing shots of Bailey's, then Grand Marnier, and finally finished with 1800. At last call, I made it to the valet and prayed to God to get me home without an accident. I could barely walk or see at this point. I woke in the early morning feeling absolutely terrible. I tried to eat something and immediately barfed it out. I also had diarrhea, and a couple times I actually puked between my legs while sitting on the toilet. I kept trying to sleep, but I kept getting sick. And at one point I was lying on the bathroom floor with my head resting against the toilet because it felt so cool to the touch. By early afternoon it was getting worse. I now had the dry heaves. And while I could not even try to drink water and keep it down, as soon as I would drink, it would come right back up. And that was followed by bile from inside my stomach. During this time, I've been trying to add up how many drinks that I had had down the night before, and I kept losing track when I got over 20. I didn't realize at the time, but I had alcohol poisoning. Finally, about 3:30, I was able to drink some water and not have it come back up on me. I turned on the cold water tap at my sink and splashed my face several times, trying to feel a bit better. After I wiped my face, I looked in the mirror. I saw my reflection. I saw my hair was completely disheveled. There was still a lot of makeup on my face, mostly black eyeliner around my blotched red eyes. I had huge bags hanging from underneath them, blending into a pasty white complexion. Plain and simple, I looked awful. There was also a look of quiet desperation staring back at me. I could never really look at myself for any length of time in the mirror, but this time my stare was locked on that reflection for what seemed like an eternity. I gasped a sigh of utter sadness, and out of my mouth came these words, "God, I can't do this anymore. You have to help me." Fortunately, he did. And I found a wonderful 12-step program that I'm still a member of. And it was through finding my sobriety that things started to get better in my life. It was slow, but they started to get better. I got out of the restaurant industry. I got hired by the Maui Chamber of Commerce by a woman who had no idea who I was, but I was just told her I was honest, I would work hard, and if she hired me and trained me, I don't think it would be a mistake for her. And she took a chance and she hired me. And I did very well at the job. And as I kept doing the program and kept staying one foot in front of the other, trying to just not drink anymore and not do drugs, I continued with the psychiatric and the psychological help, and I did group therapy, and I did all kinds of therapy. And then my therapist up and was going to leave the island, and I thought I was lost. But that's when my salvation came, when I got a male therapist for the first time. And after we had met for maybe a couple months, he kept asking to meet Danielle, and I kept saying, you can't meet her, she's dead. I killed her. And he looked at me and he goes, "That's not how this works." Of course I knew it, and then I realized, he's already got all the information anyway. So I slowly introduced myself to Kevin. So at the end of one particular session towards the holidays, he asked if he could say something to me. Kevin explained how he felt sorry for Danielle because of how horribly I had treated her. And I remember it as he said it this way: "You have kept Danielle locked up. You have abused her physically. You have abused her mentally. You have never, ever given her the same chances that you would have given Daniel. What would be so wrong to give her the same chance?" And nobody had ever asked me this before. No one. And I sat there stunned. I didn't know what to say. And he explained, he goes, "Well," he asked me, "what do you do on a weekend?" And I told him all the things I normally did on the weekend. And he said, "Well, what would be so wrong to have Danielle do that?" And no one had ever asked me that. So a few weeks later, for the first time in a couple months, I dressed up as who I am now and went out and did all the exact same things as a normal person, not trying to hide, not trying to sneak around, not trying to feel shamed, but just as me. And I couldn't believe how comfortable I had felt. And the next weekend I did it both Saturday and Sunday. And then we kept working on it in therapy. And I kept thinking, where I never thought that I would transition, I started thinking, oh my God, maybe I can. Even though I'm getting older, maybe I can do this. Because really I don't have to worry about anyone else but me. I just have to do this for me. And I was so afraid of slipping back into that secrecy and that hatred, that self-hatred. I had gotten to a place where I started to love who Daniel was, and then I started to be able to love who Danielle was. So about 6 months into this, we kept talking about it. We went into the next year. And I was really so close, but I just couldn't make the decision. And it was towards the holidays, and I kept going over all the costs and what it would take, and I'd have to tell the chamber and the board of directors, I'd have to do all this. Would they still give me a job? And I was just so nervous. I just sat there fidgeting, and I'll just finish the end of the chapter. Nervously, we continued at the end of the session. I was going about all the possibilities and trying to feel good about them, and I realized that I was really close to this decision. And then Kevin noticed that I was playing with something in my hand. It was my sobriety medallion, which is something I do when I'm nervous. And he says, "Daniel, what's in your hands?" "Oh, it's my 12-step coin," I said. "Oh, what does it say on it?" I said, "Oh, Kevin, it's really cool," I answered with a smile. "It has this triangle on it, and it says unity, service, and recovery. It also has the number 5 on it in Roman numerals, because that's how many years that I've been sober. And on the back of it is this thing they call the Serenity Prayer." With that, I looked at the coin, And he says, what else does it say on it? I go, what else? So I took the coin and I looked at it again. And across the top of it, I saw the words that I had forgotten. And in a very deliberate manner, I said, to thine own self be true. I looked at Kevin and I repeated the words, to thine own self be true. A third and final time, I repeated the words aloud, to thine own self be true. And that was it. I knew that my inner struggle had ended and that it was going to be okay to be me.